Well, welcome back to CoinDesk Live. I'm Pete Rizzo, editor at CoinDesk, and we're here in New York at the flagship CoinDesk studios. Today, Facebook is in Washington, where the first of two hearings of the U.S. Congress have now concluded. Of course, comments from Libra CEO David Marcus are now in the books. You can find the comments on CoinDesk.com. But here we're bringing you interviews with crypto experts and veterans to break down what happened in D.C., what to expect about the regulatory environment going forward, and what Facebook means for the broader industry. To my right, Juan Llanos, former fintech and regtech lead at Consensus and CEO of Llanos Advisors. Welcome, Juan.
Thank you. Thanks, Pete. Thanks for having me.
So first question, how does Facebook's launch of Libra change your investment thesis, or not investment thesis, but thesis on the technology?
Well, when Libra was announced, mid-June, I believe, early June, the first thing that came to my mind is, after reading the white paper, obviously, was the payments use case is already theirs.
Right.
So a $2 billion customer user company, global, super profitable and successful.
So if somebody was to come to you today, seek your consultation, say we want to do payments based on blockchain or cryptocurrency, you would say find something
right. Else. If they're going to design a new token, there's going to be this payments network or payment system. I would recommend probably, why don't you become an exchange that can, or a wallet that would host, among other assets, the Libra token, right? Because that is where the competitive aspect is going to be. There's going to be this infrastructure for payments that, if it succeeds, after all these obstacles, who knows? But if it succeeds as a global infrastructure, it could be the token of choice for global payments, right, or for remittances even. And I also envisage Libra for business, the business side of value transfer across borders. And so we see this as a retail product, but it could be also a business product. And all these companies that are currently doing payments, on crypto rails, could probably be disrupted, or unless they are the hosts and the wallets and the gateways into this new token.
What was your thought that, or something I find interesting about Facebook's approach is they chose to rebuild the infrastructure. So they didn't choose to build on an existing cryptocurrency network.
Right. Yeah, exactly. Well, first of all, if you think about Facebook before crypto, Facebook Payments was already an MSB, a money services business, regulated by FinCEN at the federal level, and also with licenses in all the states, right? So they already have, just like Amazon Payments or Google Payments, these large companies already have networks that allow them to move money and store money, right, and become and be payments processors. And the thing is that the innovation is that obviously I think they were smart to take the best of each existing technology. I think I would do the same today. I would learn from the best and try to design a structure that would, avoid pitfalls that are known and try to make it future-proof. So they did that. They took the consensus mechanism from one, the idea of a federation to bootstrap it at the beginning from a Stellar kind of network, for example, or a kind of a Ripple network.
Yeah, but I guess what do we take away from the fact that they didn't launch on Bitcoin, Ethereum, or any of the alternatives? Is this so the play is, we're still talking about this as an infrastructure play. Facebook wants to own a foundational layer of the cryptocurrency payment world.
Exactly. Well, Senator Brown, with his rather scathing opening statement today, he said, you're here to change the world, but you're also here to make money, right? So obviously it's a incredible play as a corporation to co-opt a emerging technology and a use case, the payments use case. Right. To me, that is what they're after. They want to conquer the world, like any large organization. So that's what they're after, and they're going to face all of the obstacles that are smaller players. The types of companies that I help as an advisor are usually struggling to launch any of these components that would ideally break out and become the platform of choice, right? And they still have a chance, I think, but they will have to work with Facebook if it ever is able to launch.
Is Facebook being too naive in its approach here? They're coming to the regulators and they're saying, we're not going to launch until everything is, you guys are okay. Everything is all set. Do you buy that they're going to be able to actually launch this if that's the approach?
So, to me, first of all, I think that their assumption, the biggest assumption based on what I've read, is that they're not going to have to touch the securities framework. They're going to be exclusively in the payments and money realm, meaning they will have to do anything related to payments. In the United States, there's a regime for that, for stable coins, basically, which is basically prepaid access stored value. And that is akin to money transmission. It requires the same level of compliance, right? State money transmission licenses, federal AML programs. Europe, it would be e-money, and you would have to find the foreign equivalents of that framework. So any discussion about securities or pools of funds and all these things, I think they're going to try to argue that that is not what they're trying to do. And based on what I've read, tomorrow maybe tomorrow's hearing would probably dig into that, because I think that's where the questions will come up. But I don't think they're being naive. I think they're being purposeful in presenting their point of view. We're going to be a payments entity. Forget about anything that has to do with securities. We're not going to be an investment fund. This is not an investment scheme. This is just stored value, an asset that is custodied in a depository institution or a pool of assets like multiple currencies. And there's a digital representation or an issuance of a crypto token representing that asset. It's an asset-backed or a fiat-backed or a highly liquid asset-backed payments system.
So you're saying the innovation here is that they're taking their existing regulatory approvals that they've gotten, and they're sort of just marrying this to the infrastructure of the cryptocurrency network.
Correct. I think the only innovation here, and I've been tweeting about this. It's nothing new. Stored value has been there for a while. All of the money transfer companies I work with, we know, are also regulated equally, right? There's a requirement for a 100% full reserve behind anything that happens in a non-bank. So that is already out there from the point of view of regulation. What is an innovation is this global entity based in Switzerland that will be the official issuer of the token, as opposed to the individual company. For example, if we take the Circle dollar or the Gemini dollar, all these digital assets, there is an entity, the Circle company, or whichever part of that group of companies, or Gemini, issuing the stored value. And then, of course, it has a use case, which is basically disrupting correspondent banking. It's a rail system to move money around digitally outside of banks. That is what stablecoins do, right? But in this case, the innovation is creating this organization that will be issuing this global currency that will have a value equivalent to a basket of assets that are recognizable by the world, right? Everyone knows how much a euro is worth. Everyone knows how much a dollar is worth. I'm from Argentina. We're a completely dollarized economy underground, right? Of course, we have the everyday life is in our local currency, but anything that has to do with assets, purchasing a car or an apartment, the savings store of value is in dollars. So everyone recognizes the value of a dollar or a stable legal tender. So to me, the first thing is the innovation is going to be that, and I don't think there is any, and Jerry Brito of Coin Center and I were exchanging those views online. There's no precedent. I haven't seen a company that has issued global electronic money, right? We have seen and we see electronic money issued by every company every time you get an EMI license in Europe or every time you get a money transmission license in the United States. You're basically issuing electronic money already, right? Because you're storing the value, representing it in a digital balance. It could be shown on your wallet, it could be shown on a statement, and it's a value at risk, the value in transit that it gets stored. So the equivalent legally is out there, has been. The innovation is really the Libra Association issuing the currency.
Once again, taking questions on YouTube and Periscope. Got a question here from one of our watchers. Is Libra closer to Bitcoin or closer to a Tether, in your opinion?
Closer to Tether, absolutely. I think what they try to do is, I don't know how they're going to do the transition, into this future fully decentralized cryptocurrency. But they're closer to Tether, to a Tether type of product, because there's real assets behind the representation of that value. This is a digital value that travels online, serves to make and receive payments, and probably earn some points or earn money on apps or something like that eventually. But there's every unit here is represented by a unit here. That is the obligation right now, and by law. So the Bitcoin is completely different. It's a completely decentralized, anonymous, open system that has a value that the community gives it.
So one of the things that it really picked up on, I thought was really clear in the hearings, is that there was both a lack of willingness from Facebook to define Libra relative to Bitcoin, and there was a lack of, in the questions from the senators, of using Bitcoin as a context for what Facebook is doing. Is that a deliberate omission if you're Facebook? Are you trying to avoid comparison with Bitcoin, or maybe it's just not an apt comparison at all?
That's interesting. Maybe they are being deliberate in not making that distinction. Other people are actually making that distinction on purpose to draw a contrast. And it's a very legitimate argument or posture to do it. Let's show the difference between a form of technology that is an alternative payment system, a sort of parallel universe that was created, and this other more established, regulated.
I guess it just surprised me that Bitcoin would seem so controversial at this point still.
Well,
for it to be avoided. I mean, I guess I'm drawing an implication there that might not be actually true, but I'm just surprised it didn't come up, right? It just seems odd.
Right, and I think what I think is odd also is that, and I understand why, right? If you understand politics and the virtue signaling and all that and paternalism, it's good for politics, right? You have to jump out at the potential systemic risk of this disruptive technology, especially a company that is under scrutiny because of privacy violations. So you make a big fuss of it, right? Publicly. That's policymakers, right, or lawmakers. But why are not they subjecting any other cryptocurrency to the same scrutiny? Why are they not talking about Tron? Why are they not talking about Binance? Why are they not talking about Bitfinex and all the companies that are floating around and raising several billions of dollars in potentially unregulated crowdfunding schemes, and they're being used by retail investors. There's no protections. There's no critical infrastructure. There's no vetting of the management
like a bit
character.
Like Nouriel Roubini here. So you're sounding a little bit like Nouriel Roubini here.
No, I'm saying that it's a fairness
it's fair
argument.
Criticism. Yeah, it's fair criticism.
Right. It's just I'm trying to be balanced, right?
I like a lot of Nouriel's arguments, to be fair. Yeah.
Well, I think he represents 95% of the thinking of the average American, or he's just being honest about what most people think. Sometimes in the Bitcoin, and I'm also an innovation guy. I support innovation, disruptive innovation. I had my real life experience with hyperinflation in my country. I know the horrible impact of mismanagement, right, or at the macro level. And I know all the benefits of crypto. I've defended it. I'm just open for it to flourish and to create an alternative. But the concerns are valid, right? Everyone should. We cannot like Angela. People attacking Angela Walsh. Her arguments are brilliant. Are the right kind of thinking. If we want to create a solid alternative infrastructure that's going to replace all of the crap that exists today, right? If we want to be critical, let's build on a sound foundation. Let's think about all the potential risks.
So we get another question here. So one of the reasons that Bitcoin took off, obviously, was that its appeal for investors, right? Like people are invested in Bitcoin. We now think of Bitcoin as a store of value.
Yes.
That's become the pejorative argument. I don't know whether that's good or bad, but it definitely has happened. Does is Facebook losing out by not capitalizing on the same tools that Bitcoin used to grow? So I guess the question here is, from an investor point of view, why use this, and does that somehow limit Facebook's ability to grow here?
Well, if we're talking about the Libra token, the Libra token is not going to be a investable.
Well, at least not for the general public.
Right,
but for
exactly. It is for the lucky,
for the privileged,
can I say cartel, or group of people that got together.
It's a word.
And conceived of this federation, and they're investors. They're motivated by profit, obviously, and also probably in the future leveraging the technology for other things. I think the impact that this could have, addressing the underbanked and getting in corners of the world that have never been touched by value and finance are incredible. So we should be focused on that, the stimulative aspects, rather than the potential punitive and prudential aspects. But anyway, so to answer that question, the Bitcoin is completely different. I mean, you believe in it, the world believes in it. It's a real resilient technology that can sustain the test of time or pass the test of time, and is a store of value. Let's use it. There's always going to be a use case for store of value and speculation. The ups and downs in the market. That's not going away. Libra is a completely different thing. It's just a payments ecosystem.
Interesting. I got a comment here. Stop boring your guest with inane questions. Why don't you ask me? Why don't you ask me?
Let's talk about any other thing.
Yeah. Why don't you ask me a question then? I guess.
Okay. Well, so I've known you for a while. So what have you? How have things? Okay. What do you think people want to hear about?
You're asking me
boring.
What questions?
No. Yeah. What? Let's talk about. Let's do a meta question. What do you think people are interested in? It's 4 p.m. in New York. Very hot summer day.
What do I think people are interested about Facebook and Libra?
Yeah.
I think people want to know what this means for their pocketbook, right? I think a lot of people are in the cryptocurrency world to make money, right? Whether you're a business person or you're a retail investor. I think it sounds like you're saying that Facebook is so big, they have so many users, that's going to make it hard to compete.
To me, it's I don't know if it's going to be high growth from day one, but the potential size of this payment system can have is potentially huge.
But are you rooting for Facebook? Maybe let's talk about that. Do you feel as someone who was an early innovator here? To
me, I like the fact that there is an alternative innovation. That's something that is happening. And you know what I like the most about this Libra announcement is the fact that discussions about regulation and its impact as an instrument of power is beginning to be challenged by a wider audience. Because regulation, of course, it can help protect society. It's necessary for us to be safe and secure and to have sound systems and infrastructure. But it's also an instrument of power, right? So people are now beginning to talk about Financial Action Task Force and OFAC and sanctions and Iran and North Korea. So the fact that a 20-year-old is talking about that, and that we have several governments of the world challenging a company for introducing an innovation, and we have all these discussions around the world about the obstacles for innovation, like Caitlin's article yesterday. It was amazing. She the kind of the arguments she presented.
I didn't read. What was her arguments?
Hat tip to Caitlin Long. She wrote her own answers to the questions in the hearings, and she wrote brilliantly about the things that systemic risks and hidden liabilities and structural problems in regulation. And obviously, she was also showcasing Wyoming, as she always does. But the fact that she basically presented an alternative regulatory system that exists in the United States, to me, this is an opportunity to redefine and challenge the structural regulation in America, in the United States of America. That is the opportunity here.
How does it do that if Marcus is coming and saying, "I want you to regulate us however you want," though?
Well, but okay, because they have the obligation to launch the product, right? That's the CEO's job, right? To get a product up and running. But the salutary side effects are that we are talking about this. Hopefully, remember the hearings in late 13?
Yep.
Right, we were all there, right? And also the New York State Banking Department.
I wasn't there. My first one was the bit license.
Okay.
The bit license
later in early January, right? January 14. So that was also important. It was broadcast publicly, but the community was like this big. Now we're talking about how many hundreds of thousands of followers do you have and viewers. So we have new generations, younger people understanding politics, game theory, economics, power. All these things are being democratized. We're opening up how the world works to a younger generation.
I want somebody to say something bad about Facebook, though. Nobody said anything bad.
Okay. So, well, I am with everyone else who criticizes I fear that they may not be truthful in their statements, right? They have committed publicly to segregate the Calibra and Libra aspects from the Facebook engine, which is this behemoth of cross.
But they, committed
data monetization.
Well,
but who knows? I mean, could there be a communicating vessel?
I signed up for Facebook, and it was only supposed to be at my college.
True.
So
well, what I would like to see happen also is what everyone else is the fact that we should be getting paid as users for the use of our data. It's a form of theft, basically, to me at this point.
You don't think Facebook? But Facebook would never approach something like paying people for the use of their data.
Why? Well, but maybe part of their.
That would be a staggering change in their business model.
Well, but if
it's possible,
if there's another Cambridge Analytica event or a couple more in the next 5 years, they may have to reinvent themselves to regain credibility. They have a serious trust issue right now.
Right.
So maybe their future, in part of their foray into crypto, is to research the technology so that they can reinvent themselves. Maybe that's part of the strategy also. Right?
Yeah, a lot of the senators really hammered them on the business plan, and I don't think they presented one.
Yeah. So anyway, what can I say bad about Facebook? I don't know. So far, I think they're doing everything that is to be done. They've talked about Graham-Leach-Bliley, which is a privacy regulations in the United States for financial services firms. First time I hear that GLBA being mentioned by any financial services firm, in spite of the fact that every payments company has to comply with those rules, privacy rules. So I think they're checking all the boxes. Problem is that lawmakers and the senators are not knowledgeable about the depth of regulation. And maybe they're politically motivated to attack Facebook, but everything they're doing so far is within the frameworks of the law. The open questions are all these questions about the nature of the fund, the Libra Association in Switzerland. What is it going to be? How come there's going to be an issuer of global e-money when e-money is always jurisdictional? Is in Europe or in the United States or in each state actually. It's probably in Singapore there's an equivalent, or in Japan. So how do you make this a global thing? That is a challenge. But the fact that it's happening is very positive, because now we are a global village, global humanity. So we should be able to move value across the world, and it's not possible because of regulation.
Clarification question. Shout out to Jackie T, who's been a big critic of this conversation.
Okay.
She
Thank
or
you, Jackie.
he or they, I'm not sure I'm not sure this person on the internet, but a clarification question about the digital license you mentioned that said that there has to be 100% digital representation of the value.
Yes.
So is there any way in which Facebook can decide not to go into fractional reserve or do something like that? Or under the license?
That is a very good question, because Facebook, the Libra Association actually, let's not talk about Facebook.
Great question, by the way.
It's a good question. So the Libra Association is going to be minting the cryptocurrency value that is going to be backed by this reserve. This reserve is going to be held in a geographically dispersed network of banking institutions.
Which I think is slang for Zappo.
I think quoting one of the papers or the responses there. They talk about geographically dispersed. So the value is going to be held in banks. As long as the value is held in banks, you know what banks do, right? They lend out 90% of their deposits, right? But that is the bank's thing. The assets that are held backing a stable coin are supposed to be held in trust. That means that it cannot be used for other purposes other than to support the value, digital value.
For a stable coin.
For a stable coin.
But
And that's for money transmission also, right? So I recommend, if you have time and if you can inclination, go to Google the word permissible investments. Permissible investments is kind of the how do you hold the value in transit, right? Someone comes in to deposit into your digital wallet, and it stays there for a while, right? Either under a remittance plan, 2 or 3 days, 4 days, or under a prepaid access stored value scheme, right? It stays there. You are the regulated entity, MSB, and at some point in the future, it gets delivered in the destination country or other side of the pipeline, right? So while the value is stored and held by the licensed money transmitter, that value has to be stored in custody in permissible investments, which is a limited number of assets, highly liquid and high quality, like treasuries, government obligations, even receivables, right? If there's guaranteed or semi-guaranteed receivables coming in, you can count those as part of the permissive investments. So the assets cannot be used or repurposed for other things than to support the value or to match the one-to-one
and that is
obligation.
in law 100%. They can't.
And you know who? Let me mention this. I was the first Chief Compliance Officer for Bit Reserve, Uphold.
Sure, yeah.
And Halsey Minor, back in 14 or early 14, when I met him, had this idea. So if you remember how Bit Reserve was, remember when it was
a gold-backed currency?
The whole concept was to have, first of all, the pitch was to let's remove the volatility of Bitcoin, right? Park your money into a digital version of the dollar, a bit dollar or a bit pound or a bit euro. And it's not going to fluctuate as much as the Bitcoin value.
It's amazing how uninterested people were in the stablecoin model for so long.
And you know why they're interested now?
Because it removes.
I'm going to say something here that will probably cause some ripples.
Sure. Yeah.
Pun intended. Which is the fact, and I think Caitlin also alluded to it in her article or other statements as well. The reason why we have stable coins, why they're successful, is the failure of banks to open bank accounts and provide banking services to all these crypto companies. It is so hard to get a financial services entity to convert the value back at the destination point that it's much easier to use a digital rail to move that money around the world and then convert it back almost sometimes privately. So this is what I've called, and I have a draft of this, and I probably send it to you when it's ready. It's called Stablecoins and Digital Hawala. It's a form of Hawala, alternative payment value transfer mechanism, usually illicit or illegitimate, but very effective and has been in use for millennia. Right, and it's a settlement system where there's conversion of currency in the send side. There's no actual transfer of value across borders, and there's a settlement or a rebalancing on the receive side. So it's a form of balancing that requires liquidity in both endpoints of the payment. And right now, the version of the Hawala that works today and that's being used by many companies is digital, and it's used mostly on Tether and these currencies that retain the value of that was deposited to begin with. So and I'm not the first one saying this. The Europeans have called this shadow banking. There's a form of banking that happens on the sidelines in a sort of gray area. So the benefit of stablecoins is that it's a rail system that allows companies to settle internationally without going through the banking system, which is this old, legacy infrastructure that hasn't changed in decades.
Yeah, fascinating. Stablecoins almost created out of a need, but served a much broader need.
Absolutely. And it serves a B2B need, the one I just described, and it also will serve the P2P need that Libra is trying to propose.
I guess winding down, the last question. Is Facebook's Libra a Spotify moment? Is Bitcoin a Napster? Is there a risk here that this technology is now going to be co-opted by a sleeker, better model? What's your take?
Good question, and I think so for the payments use case, not for the speculative store of value digital gold use case. Anything that has to do with fluctuation, speculation, exchanges, liquidity, market making, all of the real, the foundation of growth, attracting institutional investors to fund the next generation of these currencies, that is staying, right? But what is being threatened, to me, is a payments use case if Libra succeeds. So if you're a wallet only focusing on P2P payments, struggling to get a traction, I think you're under existential threat. Yeah.
Interesting. Fascinating stuff. Juan, where can people find out more about you and what you do?
I am always on LinkedIn and Twitter, and my name is my handle, Juan Llanos, JuanLLanos.
Thank you very much, and thanks to everybody who asked questions on our YouTube. Once again, youtube.com/CoinDesk. If you're watching on Twitter or Periscope, you can ask questions there. We'll ask them to our guests. We got 2 more coming up today. Unpacking Libra's debut in DC. Juan, appreciate the time.
Thank you. Thanks you.